Hi, my name is Jared Taylor, and I'm here today at the University of Illinois Writing Project talking about writing for content learning. How do teachers usually use writing in their classrooms? It seems that a lot of teachers spend time using writing as an assessment tool instead of a tool for learning. So instead of using writing in a content area class, such as social studies or math or science, instead of using that as a way to teach students and get them to learn about the content in that class, we're using it as a tool where they will go off and do the assignment, or they will go out and gather information, and then they will spit that information back out onto a piece of paper, hand it in to me, and then I can see if they have done the work and learned the material. That's not the most effective way to use writing in a content area class. So, where do we get the idea that writing is used as an assessment tool? Probably from our own learning experiences as students. When I was a student, we had research papers and essay questions and book reports. Book reports are probably my least favorite thing. It was me writing a story or a summary or an explanation of some book that I probably didn't want to read anyway, so that some teacher can decide whether or not I actually read the book and put in the time. I can remember writing some letters, short answer essay question type things, and even keeping a journal in some high school classes. And there was always some sort of a writing prompt, and then I had to answer the question, and then the teacher would go back and decide whether or not I had worked hard enough to answer her question. Um, what was the point of all that? It seemed like as a student that the point of that was to give me homework so that they could sit up at their desk and grade papers, or to have some way of knowing that I've done the work, that I did the homework, I read the book, or whatever the case was. But it never seemed like there was anything being done there to help me learn the material. Sure, they were marking when I put a comma in the wrong spot or something, so maybe I was getting something to prepare me to be a better writer. But I'm still sitting there, I'm still frustrated, I'm still looking at all this red ink on my paper, and I'm not necessarily learning the material from doing the writing. Here's a little Peanuts comic strip. Asks why English teachers have to go to college for 4 years. So they can make stupid little kids write stupid essays on what they did all stupid summer. I mean, I don't know about you, but I definitely felt that way sometimes when I was a student. Um, Elementary school, middle school, high school, even a little bit in college, some of the writing assignments that I did were very frustrating, and it seemed like it was more for the teacher's benefit than mine. So, some things that I believe about writing as a history teacher. I think writing is an important skill. It should be developed in all content areas. I also think it can be used as a tool for learning and not just for assessing learning. It can be used for assessing learning, but it should be used as a tool to help kids learn as well. And I think that writing encourages deeper connections with concepts or ideas in any given content area. I mean, if I'm writing down how to play a game, I'm probably going to remember those instructions or those directions or those rules. If I'm writing down something about history, so if I'm writing down similarities and differences between what Putin is doing in Russia and Crimea versus what Hitler did in Czechoslovakia in 1938, I'm probably going to have a little bit of a deeper understanding than if I just read an article that mentions both of those things. So, what are the experts saying in their research about using writing for learning content? Most of the writing students do in school is used as a way for teachers to measure comprehension. Sure, they want to know if I have done the work and if I understand, and they will be able to tell that by what I write. Writing to learn in school should be short, spontaneous, exploratory, informal, unedited, and ungraded. So, my teacher shouldn't be collecting a rough draft or an outline, because for me to just be learning content, to make it effective in teaching me about what I'm writing about, it needs to be short and spontaneous. It needs to be unedited and ungraded. Now, that doesn't mean you can't ever collect a student's paper, but for this type of writing, you want them to really be focused on the content and not so much on a polished, finished paper. Um, and this study here at the bottom, where it says writing involves the fullest possible functioning of the brain. This study was conducted in something in like 1977 or somewhere back then, but it's still a true statement. We have so many things going into the process of writing. So when we're sitting down trying to think about how to write, we're really using all of our thought processes. We're really having to use the full functioning of our brain to put together some sort of a product that people can see. Weinstein and Mayer found that 4 different kinds of strategies lead to learning: rehearsal, organization, elaboration, and comprehension monitoring. Dean goes on to talk about in her book about how writing can contribute to all of these. Um, Rehearsal, if we are doing pre-writing, even if it's invisible pre-writing and we're just thinking about what we want to say, we're rehearsing. And then as you're putting those ideas onto paper, you're thinking about it, you're writing it, and you're probably reading it as you're writing it. So you're rehearsing it. You're seeing that information more than once. It's passing through your brain more than once. Organization, of course, anytime we write anything, we have to organize our thoughts. Otherwise, it would be impossible to understand from the reader's perspective. So I'm going to organize my thoughts in a way that makes sense to me and in a way that I think will make sense to my audience. Elaboration. So if I'm writing out a response to something or a summary or even a comparison contrast type paper, I'm going to have to elaborate on my thoughts. I can't just say, the car is red. I need to elaborate and tell you why I think it's red or what red is. Um, I'm going to have to really elaborate on my thoughts and make it so that my audience knows exactly what I'm talking about. And comprehension monitoring, yeah, so that kind of goes back to assessment a little bit, but having students write where they are rehearsing and organizing and elaborating on information and ideas, then we're going to be able to tell how well they're comprehending the information. Um, Dean also says that writing tasks that take more time tend to produce smaller benefits to learning because we're probably spending more time thinking about the process of writing and less time thinking about the content. We're not sitting there writing down our thoughts and ideas. We're sitting there trying to figure out how to make a polished paper. So Edgar Dale's cone of experience model. This thing is pretty out of date as well. And you can see the learning pyramid to the right is not the same statistics exactly as Dale's cone of experience model. This pyramid on the right is a little more recent. And you can see down there the orange bar, practice by doing, 75%, average retention rate. So it's saying that something where we're doing it, we're participating actively, we're going to retain about 75% of the information on average. So if you look over on the left side and see 70% of what they say and write. So if I say something and write it down, chances are I'm going to remember it. I can remember something that worked well for me studying for college exams was to simply take notes in class, pay attention, so I hear it, I probably see it on the professor's whiteboard or smartboard, and then I'm writing it down. Now, when I go home and have a test in a few weeks, I'm going to probably spend a day or two before that test rewriting my notes. So now I'm reading it for the second time, I'm writing it for the second time. So now I have heard it, seen it, written it, and then written it and seen it a second time. So chances are I'm going to remember that information pretty well. So writing, as you can see on both of these, on the left and the right, writing is an active way of trying to remember material, and it's pretty effective. Um, so this book, Content Area Writing, Every Teacher's Guide, they have several writing to learn strategies listed. The ones on the left are a little less involved. The ones on the right are a little more involved. So an exit slip. You have kids write down a couple of things that they felt like they learned during the day. Brainstorming. We've all done brainstorming exercises probably all the way back since elementary school. Drawing and illustrating, clustering, mapping. So these are all ways to put on paper, make your own graphic organizers, do something with information to record it and see it after you think about it. Moving to the right, written conversation, or write around. So written conversation is like students passing notes, having a conversation, only instead of talking about it, they're writing it about certain content or about a certain concept. A double entry journal, we've all seen those before. Reflective write, KWL. Teacher student correspondence is another interesting one where it students will write and the teachers will write back. So it's kind of like a journal, and the student writes and then the teacher responds, and then the student writes again in response to the teacher. And it's a dialogue between the teacher and the student, but it's personal, one-on-one in written format. Seems like a really effective way to encourage writing and thinking about content. But moving on, I also took a look at staging learning, the plays the thing. This is a section in a book called Breakthroughs, Classroom Discoveries About Teaching Writing. Hicks and Johnson described their success with students creating themed plays in the classroom. Now, they went through and explained the difference between a theme and a topic. So a topic could be sports, but a theme could be sportsmanship. So they use different topics to get students to arrive at a specific theme. And then once they have that theme, they work in small groups to create characters and a script related to a theme. Now, in this example, they use post-it notes on a like a clipboard or a poster board, and they create their characters. They try to develop their characters, and then they each take on the role of a character and imagine what those characters would say in a given situation. Um, and then as they're going through the process, they're moving their sticky notes up and down, trying to figure out where some of the comments that they wanted to be sure were included are at in this dialogue or in this conversation. They're moving them back and forth, trying to figure out the best way to do it. Some of their examples seemed like the students really had a good time with it, and they were learning about certain content. But what about this? Written dialogue between characters in any content area. So this is kind of going off of the play idea and off of the written conversation idea and kind of making it my own. So written dialogue between characters in any content. If I were an English teacher, could I have students write about a conversation between an adjective and an adverb? What would that look like? Would they argue about which one has the most important job in English language? Science. Protons and neutrons having a discussion about their relationship. Math. Could mathematical symbols try to explain to each other what their jobs are? Social studies. A conversation between different historical figures from different places and time periods. How would Nelson Mandela and President Obama talk to each other? What would President Lincoln say to Hitler? So by using what students already know and providing them with some resources to find more information, they could probably come up with some really interesting connections between these different figures in history. Physical education, dialogue between athletes from different sports or different pieces of sporting equipment. How would they talk to each other? I'm thinking of like a baseball bat and a hockey stick walk into a bar, and you finish the story. Children's literature. I'm not sure how I came up with this idea, but imagine a conversation between the man with the yellow hat from Curious George, Dave from Alvin and the Chipmunks, and John Arbuckle from Garfield having a conversation about pet care or parenting, really. I feel like that would be an interesting conversation because looking back at all of those cartoons and books, they have pretty different styles, and it might be kind of funny to see what a young student could come up with who was familiar with all three of these characters. So my example in social studies was to make connections between current events and course content. So in this example, we're using World War II, actually pre-World War II, 1938, when Adolf Hitler decides that he wants a unified Germany, and he begins expanding into Czechoslovakia. He's already taken Austria and claimed it again, or united it with Germany, and now he wants the Sudetenland in Czechoslovakia. Now, of course, the policy around the world was appeasement because we didn't want another world war on our hands. So they end up meeting with Hitler in Munich and allowing him to go ahead and take the Sudetenland. Hitler's argument was they are ethnic Germans there. They want to be German. They should be part of Germany. So I'm going to take it. But I won't take anything else, I promise. So appeasement. We decide we'll let him do that if it ends the possibility of a fight. Imagine that mother at the checkout aisle at the local grocery store and the little kid's jumping up and down because he wants a candy bar. Mom is embarrassed, still needs to check out and get her groceries so she can make dinner tonight. So she gives in, gives the kid a candy bar so that he will be quiet and stop jumping up and down and embarrassing her in front of all these people. She has just appeased that child. We did the same thing to Hitler. He jumped up and down, screaming that he wanted the Sudetenland. So Chamberlain and I forget who else was even involved. They all jump in, say, okay, take it, but that's it. I'm not giving you anything else, and you need to stop the tantrum. Well, of course, in 1939, Hitler decides he wants Poland too, and World War II begins. Now, I'm using this example to compare to the situation in Russia and Ukraine right now with the violence between pro-European Union and pro-Russian, I guess I could say, factions, and then Putin's intervention with pro-Russian troops in the Crimea Peninsula. So it's a similar situation where it seems that a large power is claiming that people in another region of another country are ethnically or culturally tied to, let's say in Putin's case, Russia. So he's saying that residents in Crimea are linked to Russia. They want to be Russian, so they should be Russian, and he's going to take it. And then, of course, they voted, and that's the whole debate. So in this example, I asked teachers